Good evening, folks, and welcome to the other live stream. Apologies about what happened. I'm not sure. Some technical problems, some software problem with the tool I used to stream. So it's great to see everyone on over here. The other one should have shut down. I hope it did. Let's see who we have. We have Master Templar. Great to see you once again. Liam is here. Great to see you, Liam. Ava is on. Great to have you on, Ava. Rebecca McDowell is on. Great to see you, Rebecca. Daniel is here. We have Misty Hill, great to see you. 15-year plan. That might be how long the Labour government lasts. With the Daily Mail trying claim Labour fixing of the NHS at the 5-year plan, 15-year plan. Yeah, it's I'll talk a little bit about that after. Killer, thanks for moderating and redirecting people over here. So thanks for pointing out about the stream link. Apologies once again, guys. Cryptan, great to see you. Asperger's Europe is here. Great to see you. CGM is on. Thanks to CGM and Killer for moderating tonight. We have Stefan. Great to see you. Who else have we got? Counter Kev. Great to see you. Claire Sweet is on. We also have Daily Blase, great to have you on, Daily Blase. Colin is here. Roisin, great to see you. Tiny Demolition Lover, hope you're well up there in Scotland. We also have Edgar. Oraman, Ends of the God. Chatty Rat is here. Lamentos is here too. Roseanne, great to see you. Jim, Reagan Elite, and so many more. Hope you're all very well tonight, and thanks for coming on. And apologies once again for the technical issues on the other stream. All Shorts is here. Great to have you on, All Shorts. Hope you're fine tonight. We all have tech issues. Hopefully it won't happen again. But I am trying to expand because we have the channel has a Facebook page. So I was hoping to maybe in the future to stream also to the Facebook page because some people like to view stuff on Facebook. Anyway, let's start off with some of the stories we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. Of course, Zac Goldsmith resigning, more headaches for Rishi Sunak, Euro inflation, an NHS plan, a long-term plan, and then there's also the Labour Party have come up with a plan for the water companies, which is interesting. I just want to talk first about this Brexit-related story. Brendan Clark Smith, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're fine. Oi. This week I mostly been getting ratioed by Supertansky and eating beans. I even got a few quid to help me keep my job. I'm so sorry, Brendan. The best of luck at the election, but I think you're going to need a bit more than luck. But I do hope you had a good time with 30p Lee Anderson and he didn't feed you too many beans because we know what beans do. Thanks for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream and best of luck at the next election. That's great. It says it's a Brexit related story. Migrant, well, I'll get to exactly why it's Brexit, with interestingly Brexit connected. Migrant fruit pickers are skilled workers, says ex-minister George Eustice. Do you remember George Eustice? He was the guy who was a member of UKIP, then he became a Tory, then he became the Environment Secretary, or maybe he was something in between the Environment Secretary and when he joined the Tory party. But a Brexiteer who came out and criticised the Australia deal recently, and he's been very critical of the shortage occupation list, which means that if the UK wants to bring in workers from abroad, if there aren't visas available, they can be added to the shortage occupation list, which speeds up the process, or it increase. I think maybe it's different type of visas available for them. George Useless, yes. So he's changed his tune somewhat on Brexit. He still won't say that Brexit was a mistake, but he is. When he was Environment Secretary, he was asking for more help for farms as a consequence of Brexit, but he wouldn't say Brexit. And he was critical of the Australian deal, the post-Brexit Australia deal, but he didn't say anything about Brexit there either. But I think he's another Tory who's worried about his seat if he isn't already standing down. But it says here, the government currently prioritises... ministers must completely reappraise their immigration policy, a former Environment Secretary has told the BBC. The government currently prioritises what it defines as skilled workers for migration to the UK. People who are good with their hands, like fruit pickers, should not be deemed low-skilled, George Eustace said. Home Secretary Suella Braverman has previously said that there is no good reason why the UK cannot train its own fruit pickers to cut immigration. Once again, and this has been mentioned before, fruit picking is a job you learn on the job. Like, you can't be really trained up as a fruit picker. You have to start doing the work. And, you know, how do you, like, if you can't find people to do that, then you're not going to be able to train them up. You're not going to be able to train these people. So what happened before was people would come from Eastern Europe mainly. They would work on farms. Before that, it was students. Students would do it in the summer. But now students want to do other things. They don't want to pick fruit. And it's very difficult work. It's back-breaking work. And it does require a skill. It's not a low-skilled job. Not because it requires techniques to know which fruit to pick, how to pick it so you don't damage it, how to load the basket in the way that you maximize space within the basket, depending on the type of fruit or vegetables you're picking. And then you have to be able to, in many cases, operate machinery on the farm. So drive a tractor or work a baler or work a machine that picks fruit, or you can be required to drive a van to deliver the goods or to complete some paperwork. So it's generally not just doing one job, but it can be multiple skills required. And if you have those skills, then you're going to be able to demand more money. I tried picking fruit once, so underestimated the skill that and will to do it. I didn't last the shift. Says Ava. Thanks for that comment, Ava. I think a lot of people just think it's really easy. You just pick the fruit and drop it in a basket or in a bucket, and then what's the problem? It also requires getting up really early in the morning, and then most of these places where you have to go to are generally not in within walking distance of people's homes. You have to maybe rely on public transport to get to a town, and then maybe there's a van that picks people up in the centre and drives you out there, or you live outside on the site. It's a muscle memory skill. Paid a picker 13p a pound. Takes a week to earn a tenner. You have to work fast. Pack it so when a crop is ripe, you don't have time to waste. Yeah, it's because every day the fruit or vegetables are on the plant or in the ground. There's a risk. There's a loss of money. So you have to pick it at exactly the right time. And you have to be quick. I remember it well. I was crippled after picking tatties, for a couple of days. Picking turnips for a couple of pulling turnips out of the ground. And then cleaning them off, and then putting them in the basket, and then carrying the basket or whatever it is, or a truck, or maybe a tractor, or trailer, or whatever. 12th of July was originally a holiday for picking. I didn't know that. Anyway, so in a BBC interview, the MP for Comburn and Redruth in Cornwall, a former strawberry farmer, said he completely disagreed with the UK. With the UK need for a long-term seasonal worker scheme. He called for an immigration policy that responded to the needs of the economy rather than the skilled-based system. He added, if you're doing if you're going to have skills, at least recognize the correct skills, and those are dexterous human skills. The Farming Minister, Mark Spencer, said the government was committed to backing our farmers so we would enjoy the best of British products, grow our economy and deliver food security that we need. He said 45,000 seasonal worker visas would again be made available to the horticulture sector next year, with £12.5 million being spent on research and development of automation and robotics to help improve productivity and sustainability. Freckle Pony, thanks so much for that super chat. I'd give you £1,000 max, but my account has been terminated. I'll send you the cash via carrier pigeon in future. I wonder, is this a reference to our good friend Nigel Farage, or maybe it's Sir Ron? Thanks, Freckle Pony. Yes, isn't it so interesting how Nigel Farage, he was talking about China, he was talking about Ukraine. There was another country that he missed out. I can't remember. Russia, yes, Russia. I wonder why he didn't mention Russia, about, the corrupting influence of Russia on Western politicians. Yeah, of course, not him. He wouldn't be taking money from the Russians, of course. So he's completely clean. So it's so strange that somebody like Nigel Farage, who would certainly not take money from the Russians, would have his bank account closed and be rejected new bank accounts from different banks. I really don't understand, because of course he's not taking money from Russia. So and Russia is of course being sanctioned in many ways. So it's a real head scratcher, isn't it? Peter, thanks so much for that super chat. Tory minister, prostitution is a skilled worker. Yes, it is, definitely. Thanks for that, Peter. Politician isn't a skill, and if you were to regard it as a skill, you learn it on the job. So they couldn't ask people to, so they couldn't expect they couldn't add a politician to the shortage occupation list, could they? Making inflation worse. It allows in people with cognitive skills, lawyers, accountants, but we have no shortage of those people. In the age of artificial intelligence, many of those jobs can be done by robots in future. At the other end of the scale, we don't allow people with dexterous skills. They are the skilled robots. They are the skills robots find hardest to do. People who work in food factories, for instance. Such jobs are also where there are acute labour shortages, he added. Like this thing of what the Tories are saying, well, we're going to encourage businesses to invest in new technology. Okay, but it takes years for the new technology to come on stream. What are you going to do until that new technology is up and running? What are you going to do until the robots are able to do these jobs? Robots are very good at the moment of doing one specific job. So you can actually buy robots that will pick fruit, but that's all they can do. They can pick the fruit and drop it in a basket, but they can't drive a tractor, or they can't load it into a van, or they can't do, there are many things that they can't do. So you still need people until we're at a stage where the robot can do everything. We're years away from that yet. But the farmers are saying we need the staff now. There's no point telling us, in the future you'll have robots. Yes, but in the future I may not have a farm. That's the problem. It's a complete disconnect, as always. And, in many cases it's, you have to rely on the local people. Yeah, but the local people don't want to do the work, or the local people can't do the work, or there are no local people because we're out in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town is like 20 miles away, and there are no public transport connections, and we're not going to pay people 15 quid an hour to pick fruit because we can't afford that. So that's what's going to happen. That's what's happening now. Oh my god. Okay, let's move on. Tractorless drivers with GPS. Yes, they exist, but I've seen a few in Ukraine actually. They were clearing mines. but they're remote controlled. Basically, they're not actually driver. Like the driver isn't in the tractor. But I've also seen excavators. You know, a guy in an office working remotely. A number of excavators. Tories don't get tasered. Thanks so much for that super chat. Yay! Thank you so much for that support. I love the game controller. It looks like a Super NES, Super SNES, wasn't that what it was called? Like Super Nintendo Entertainment System controller. Robotics is a long way, but AI is something that will advance it. How much does this tech cost? Yes, so you know, if you're a farm that's struggling at the moment, maybe you don't have the money to invest in new technology. You'd love to, it would probably help you, but unless the government are going to give you massive grants, then you're not going to do it. Like you could say, well, I could do all this work with a robot, but the robot costs like £100,000. Then you know, I'm not going to be Rishi is a robot. Rishi is a robot, yes. Is Rishi a robot? He definitely is. He sounds like one anyway. Anyway, let's move on to the Rwanda policy. So this is not good news for Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak. You know, stopping the boats was one of his pledges or one of his priorities, and well, the High Court have poured cold water on that.
Stop the boats. Rishi Sunak's pledge to the country. Easy to say, but the Prime Minister reminded today how hard it is to deliver. The Court of Appeal ruling against the government's Rwanda plan.
There is a real risk that persons sent to Rwanda will be returned to their home countries where they faced persecution or other inhumane treatment when in fact they have a good claim for asylum. And that
this is the main point. This is something that has been forgotten, and you'll hear Tory MPs and Suella Braverman and others saying, we're going to do our best. We're going to work around these problems. But if this is an issue in Rwanda, that Rwanda is not safe, well, there's nothing the British government can do about that. So this is the big problem for the Rwanda supporters, the people who support this policy. The judge ruling. The ruling from the High Court is that Rwanda is not safe. So you can't send people there. So the only way that could change is if Rwanda did become safe. And how does Rwanda become safe? Well, its government has to make it safe. But its government doesn't have any intention at the moment of making it safe. So there's nothing Suella Braverman can do. There's nothing the British government can do. They can throw money at the problem. They can send more money to Rwanda, but that's not going to make it more safe. And this is the main argument against the policy in the first place. Kevin, thanks so much for that super, Kevin Slims. Nigel Farage followers want to boycott his bank, but don't realise that they're too working class to step foot near it. Yeah, I've seen so many comments, and you know, it's all his supporters. Now there have been a few contrarians who've been like, oh, I don't like Nigel Farage, but unfortunately some of them are on the left. I've seen their comments, and they've been saying that this has a chilling effect on everyone, and you might not like Nigel Farage, but this could be applied to you as well. Look, I don't know. And nobody knows, maybe apart from Nigel Farage himself, what's going on here. Because in his clip, he didn't give us a lot of information to work off. But it seems, I believe he's been blacklisted for some reason. It could be connections to a country that's currently been sanctioned. It could be money that he's received either directly or indirectly from that country that's been sanctioned at the moment. It could be any of these things. I don't know. It's all speculation. But it's the fact that he couldn't open an account with other banks means that he's probably blacklisted. If he's telling the truth, it means that he's blacklisted. Now, your average person on the street is not going to be blacklisted unless they've been involved unless they are involved, or unless there's the belief that they have been involved in some sort of money laundering. Your average person on the street isn't going to be accused of money laundering, because we're talking about huge sums of money here. The banks don't, issue alarms for money laundering on, very small accounts. So the people who are desperately attempting to defend Nigel Farage have no understanding of how much money he's talking about and why the bank would be concerned in this way. Look, I'm going off the assumption that he's telling the truth, but this is Nigel Farage we're talking about. And it's really concerning. You have people like Ian Dale from LBC, who, you would imagine is somebody, yes, he's a Tory and he's not all that reasonable, but even he was falling for this. It could be true, but once again, as I said on the video, there are a lot of things that don't make sense. Like when Nigel Farage said that he was called up, so he received a call from his bank to say that his account was being closed. Well, it doesn't normally work like that. You may receive a call, but then your first course of action would be to go to the branch and speak with the manager or speak with the teller or speak with somebody there. Like if something like that happened to me, and I think most people have the same thing, what would you do if you received a call from your bank saying your bank account was being closed? First of all, I'd want to be sure that the person calling was from the bank. I'd have to verify that they were from the bank. And then if they didn't give me any more information, well then the first thing I do is I go to my local branch where I open the account and I'd ask them what the hell is going on here. And I wouldn't leave until they told me what the hell was going on. Nigel didn't do that. He claimed that he received a call, then he claimed that he received an email, then he claimed that he spoke to the chairman of the company, of the bank. It all sounds very strange to me. Anyway.
Unless and until the deficiencies in its asylum processes are corrected, removal of asylum seekers to Rwanda will be unlawful.
The government now with another legal fight on its hands. The Home Secretary voicing her dismay.
The Prime Minister and I have made a promise to the British people to stop the boats. We are committed.
But this has nothing to do with stopping the boats. This is about sending people to Rwanda. It's not going to stop the boats. Nobody ever said it would stop the boats.
To delivering on that promise, we've got an unsustainable problem that we need to fix. And whilst, of course, we are disappointed with the decision today, we will be putting in an application to seek...
Corey Tunt, I love the name. Corey Tunt says, isn't Moscow branch is a long way away. Courts don't have any branches, I think. Okay. So that was the name of the bank. Was it Coutts? What are they going to do with his money? Write him a check? Yeah, it all sounds very strange. It all sounds very weird. Something doesn't add up. And I'm surprised, somebody who's an expert in finance hasn't made a video about this and explained what's wrong or what's right with what he said.
Permission to appeal.
Maybe even more than the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary has staked her political career on stopping the boats. Central to that, the goal of getting these flights off the ground as early as this summer. Now that's been blocked by the courts, Conservative MPs are getting restless. The opposition are making the most of it.
The government's got no plan. It's got a gimmick, which is the Rwanda scheme, a gimmick which has already cost the taxpayer £140 million and nobody's been removed. And now we know from the court judgment this morning that the government didn't even do the basics to make sure that it was fit for purpose.
A sentiment shared by some in Scampton, where this old RAF base will become a temporary stop for those seeking asylum.
The fact that it's been ruled as illegal, that should have been looked into before they even started spending money sort of trying to implement that plan.
But we're talking about Tory MPs like Suella Braverman. You're not talking about somebody who's competent. You're talking about somebody who's an idiot. Or she did it with the idea that, well, it doesn't really matter if it fails because it's designed to keep racists and bigots happy. Or angry, I don't know which. Brad, thanks so much for that super chat. Stop the boats. Oh, stop the boats. Oh no, I have to sing it. Stop the boats, oh stop the boats, baby. Stop the boats, dip the boats over. Braverman sings First Rocks the Boat. Oh no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have sang it. I ruined it. Apologies for that, Brad. Ooh. Okay, sorry.
The whole thing has been immensely stressful for the majority of people, and one of the biggest stresses, and I cannot emphasise this enough, one of the biggest stresses is the lack of engagement from the Home Office. We have had nothing.
But you'll still vote Tory, I imagine, because the guy who is the MP for the area is a Tory MP, and a guy that has a name like a Bond villain. What's his name? Richard Drax. Thanks much, Brad, for that. Encore, Max. No, Claire, no. You have all suffered enough. So Suella Braverman likes to tell the public that this is a policy that the British people support. And if you've been living under a rock, you may not have seen this clip from Question Time yesterday, which was wonderful.
Ask, is there anyone here who supports the Rwanda policy and who wants to speak up? Because we have a lot of Conservative voters here in the audience. Yes, the man at the back with it. Let's just get a microphone to you.
Are you suggesting that France is unsafe?
Okay, hang on. I'm just asking. If there's no one here, then let's recognise that fact. Is there anyone here who supports the Rwanda policy? Yes, the man here. What you do support it at the back. I don't want to take words from your mouth. Okay, let's hear from the man in the glasses here.
I don't support the Rwanda policy as much, but I do agree with the guy when he says these people get into small boats. They've crossed several safe countries to get to France. Why do they not stay in other countries? There is no need to get into a small boat and risk your life.
Okay, but just so I'm clear, because we're very careful how we select our audiences here, and I'm not trying to overstate the importance. This is not a YouGov poll. But what I'm seeing here is that even though we have more people who voted Conservative than for any other single party here, is there anyone here who supports sending people to Rwanda?
Good on you.
It's a bit embarrassing for BBC Question Time, isn't it? It's like, we selected people who are pro-Tory. We selected people who voted for the Conservatives at the last election. Somebody must put up their hand. At least one of you, please. Nobody. Oh, no. This is very embarrassing for Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak, of course. But it goes on.
Do you want to respond to that, Helen, and to what you've heard?
This is the Tory minister.
Now or after?
No, just do it now. I'll come to you in a moment, if you forgive me.
Yeah, there's a few things to pick up there.
And I just wonder what you think of the fact that there's no support in the audience for sending asylum seekers to Rwanda.
Well, I think on that specific point, it's because this is a very hard problem to solve.
Nobody supports your policy. Yeah, because it's a hard policy to solve. Or it's a hard problem to solve. What the hell does that mean?
And I think most of us feel that we want to be welcoming people and understand that people have made hard and difficult journeys to try and come to the UK before they choose to get into a small boat. And though, yes, they're in France, they've crossed several safe countries, but we know that they have started out from places where life is very hard. And I went a few years ago to the migrant camp known as the Jungle in Calais. I took a carload of donations and I went with some other Conservative MPs, and we talked to the mainly young men who were in that camp and heard their stories. And I heard their hard stories and their reasons for so much wanting to come to the UK. And so, I heard those stories directly, but it doesn't mean that it's morally right to continue a situation where we have people risking their lives in small boats and paying people smugglers to do.
Sorry, you listened to their stories. You said that those stories were heartbreaking. And then you said, yes, that's a really heartbreaking story, but please don't come to Britain. Yes, but I want to make a life in Britain. I have family in Britain. I have connections to Britain. I don't speak French. I have nobody here. I don't want to stay here. I want to be in Britain. I feel safe in Britain. I don't feel safe here. Like, I don't want to be here. I want to be in Britain. Yeah, we understand that, but stay here. Why? Because we have to keep racists and bigots happy. Tomalig A new Tory policy, Max, stop the votes. Yes, it's the only solution. They can't stop the votes. They can't cut the NHS waiting list. They can't drop inflation. They can't grow the economy. They can't do something else. So it's to stop the votes. Well said, Domaleg.
Do that. We have to do something different to deter that. And
But deter what? Deter what? What is she talking about? Deter the people from wanting to come to Britain. So if they have connections, like Zoe, who was on the Sunday roast on this Sunday, she talked about an amazing story, a terrible story in a sense, where a young man wanted to come to Britain, and he and his family were living in Jordan. They had left Syria and they had moved to Jordan, the first safe country. They moved to a safe country. They were stuck in a refugee camp for years. And his child, I believe, had leukemia. And they'd been waiting for some sort of treatment, waiting, and they couldn't wait anymore. So he decided to go to Britain so he could get a job and he could send some money back. But he lost his life. This is, like, how do you respond to that? How does a politician say, well, no, you have to stay where you are. You're in a safe country at the moment, in Jordan. You need to stay there because we don't want you. Because if you come here, it's going to make it, it's going to upset people who don't like people from Syria. Yes, we know that you want to work in the local economy. You want to work in the economy. You want to find a job. You want to make some money to send it back to help your family. But that's going to upset racists and bigots in our country.
Actually haven't heard anything which is a real policy on that from Labour or from the SNP.
Happy to repeat it.
But they're not in power, you frigging idiot. Why do they need to present policies? They're not in power. Like, oh God, it's like, yeah, we have failed. So we want to hear what other people have to say so we can try and tear those policies down instead. Tories don't get tasered. Thanks so much once again for all of those invites to the to Discord. We have Sir Larry the Cat, Jared Mack, thank you so much. Viking President of Stu, great to see you, Stu, once again. We have Jim and Pancake Dawn. I think Pancake Dawn was already on last time. Great to have you back. It's a sort of random thing. So, and we have Alistair once again. Thanks so much, Alistair, for distributing those memberships. We have Kiel, we have William, Trey, and Tilly.
We know, we're working with France. We've got the deal with Albania. We're investing in the border. We're investing in other ways.
This is terrible.
To do it, but we know that doesn't work. We know what we need to do is, on the one hand, deter people from coming here illegally, and then on the other hand, make sure that we have the safe routes. We've welcomed 500,000 people in recent years from other countries here through safe routes.
Why? Why are people allowed to come via safe route and you're forcing others to have to cross the channel in a boat?
But that's for
the French have said on a number of occasions, if you want to set up a processing centre, an asylum processing centre in France for Britain, we're happy to do that. We're happy to allow that. But the British government has said, no, we don't want that. Because then we'd actually have to do the work. We'd actually have to bring people in. And we couldn't use this illegal migration route as an excuse. Maggie, thanks so much for that super chat. Farage could be investigated for corruption. Oh, is that news? Or is it a speculation? I hope it's news. If Farage maybe in some sort of attempt to garner sympathy may have put his foot in it.
For instance, the many thousands of refugees who've come here from Ukraine, there may be people in the audience who are hosting Ukraine.
Why is it that people from Ukraine are not being asked to stay in the first safe country? This would be my question to any racist or bigot who's like, well, they should just stay in their own country, or they should stay in the first safe country. I would say, well, do you have a problem with Ukrainian refugees? And I imagine they would say, many of them would say, no, I don't have a problem with Ukrainians or people from Hong Kong. Okay, then what's the next country from next to Poland? Sorry, next to Ukraine is Poland. Why aren't you asking these people just to stay in Poland? And you have to pass through Poland, and they don't get, at the beginning, they weren't getting direct flights from Ukraine. They were traveling into Poland and then moving from Poland to Britain, for example. You didn't have a problem with that. But now you're saying, well, these other people have to stay in France. Ukraine good, Albania bad, yes.
In terms of Rosanna's point about children, as I understand it, but correct me if I'm wrong, if you're under 18, you don't go to Rwanda.
Oh, right, yes.
So it's okay if you're 18 then? You fled war, you fled...
I'm just making the point that if you're a child, you don't go to Rwanda.
Any of these things are easy.
When you're 18, well, that's okay.
I just don't think that any of these things are easy, but I think you have...
It's inhumane.
You have to make difficult... That is what being a government is about. It's about making difficult decisions.
And it's now unlawful.
11 billion if you want to talk about the economics.
Oh, God. Belarus is next door to Ukraine and Poland. Uzbek even worse. So guys, let's take a short break, enjoy this comedy moment, and we'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. Hope you enjoy this.
Welcome to Broken News. People in a quiet British village have reacted with shock today after a lovely 39-year-old man was arrested for brutally killing his entire family. Gerald Limpet-Jones was described as a nice, kind gentleman who wouldn't hurt a fly and the sort of person you'd love to give a hug to and maybe sniff his neck. Our reporter has more.
A man who kept himself to himself, a perfect, well-toned neighbour who loved small animals, and the sort of down-to-earth fella you'd want for a son. Words used to describe Mr. Limpet-Jones, who lived just behind me here in the sleepy village of Swansfield Borough under Mipsey. The humble and well-respected hedge fund manager, who was today arrested for brutally bludgeoning to death his wife, Tracy, or Rachel or something, as well as some other women, had never done anything like this before. Friends and neighbours have paid tribute to Mr. Limpet-Jones, who's expected to face life in jail. They say they'll miss him, calling him a caring soul who gives a lot to charity and helps out at the local church. A sad loss. Back to you.
Lovely story, thank you. Well, a fundraiser has been set up to cover all legal fees, and there is to be a vigil tonight for Mr. Limpet-Jones. Best of luck to him. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
But it's something like that, you know. It's like, oh, he just kept himself to himself. He's such a really nice guy. I can't believe he was an axe-wielding murderer. Okay. Akoba rejects Boris Johnson's suggestion Sue Gray's Labour job means she was not impartial investigating Partygate. So this, of course, was this attempt by Boris Johnson and his supporters to say, Sue Gray, because Labour gave her a job, that means that she wasn't impartial. Boris Johnson and his supporters have claimed that Sue Gray's decision to accept a job from Keir Starmer implied that she was biased when investigating Partygate. You know, he thinks everyone is as bad as him. This is something about these particular Tories, the Boris Johnson brigade, the Boris Johnson clown car. It's like they are so corrupt and they are so biased and so horrible as people that they think everyone is like them. So they can't believe these people can't be impartial because you can't be impartial. You either are for Boris or you're against Boris. There's no in between, or there's no impartiality, or there's no, look, I don't like Boris Johnson, but I'm going to rule based on the facts. Or maybe they're just insane. I don't know. Mad Monk, thank you so much for that donation of subscriptions. So we have Maggie Pie, Freddie B, William, Ian, and Intellenza. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Welcome aboard. I hope to see you on the post-stream chat later on tonight. It goes on to say, Johnson repeated his suggestion in his statement earlier this month announcing his resignation as an MP. He said, I'm not alone in thinking that there was a witch hunt underway to take revenge for Brexit. and ultimately to reverse the 2016 referendum result. You know, it's Donald Trump-esque. My removal is the necessary first step, and I believe there was a concerted effort, concerted attempt to bring it about. I'm not afraid. I no longer believe that any of this is any coincidence that Sue Gray, who investigated gatherings in Number 10, is now Chief of Staff designate of the Labour leader. The Advisory Committee on Business Appointments said there has been media speculation about whether Miss Gray has breached the Civil Service Code. Any breach of the Civil Service Code would be a matter for the government. In relation to the rules, no evidence has been provided by the departments to demonstrate Miss Gray has made decisions or took action in office which favoured the employer in expectation of this role. This includes her role in the Partygate investigation. The government. It's the same with the head of the Privileges Committee. Boris Johnson supporters were saying that Harriet Harman was, biased against Boris Johnson, and she responded in a perfect way. She said, "Well, I raised this with the government, and the government said, no, you're fine." Rishi Sunak's government said, "Yeah, it's okay. Continue with your work," because the government understand the rhetoric. They understand the bullshit that goes on behind, for the media, for the voters. They understand the bullshit that Boris Johnson and his supporters get up to, and they weren't buying it. They were like, no. Harriet Harman is a respectable politician. She's a respectable chair. There's nothing to be brought against her. And it was embarrassing for Johnson and what's his name, Jacob Rees-Mogg, when he raised it in Parliament. And the same thing here. Sue Gray, if she had breached any civil service rule or code, the government could say, okay, the government could block the appointment, but they're not, because there's nothing wrong here. It's all in Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries and whoever else's minds, whatever little there is in those minds. Anyway, moving on. A minister resigned today, Environment Minister. Zac Goldsmith resigns, accusing Rishi Sunak of being uninterested in environment. So Zac Goldsmith has resigned as a minister, accusing Rishi Sunak of being uninterested in the environment. But Number 10 claim he quit after being told to apologise for undermining the parliamentary inquiry into Boris Johnson. So who do you believe? One lying Tory over another lying Tory. The Conservative peer and former MP published a long resignation letter detailing his disappointment with the Prime Minister for causing paralysis on the environment within Whitehall and choosing to attend a party at the Media Baron rather than an international environmental forum. However, Sunak hit back with a letter saying Goldsmith had been asked to say sorry for a tweet that appeared to challenge the Privileges Committee inquiry into whether Johnson misled Parliament. So I think this could be a case of Rishi Sunak getting rid of Boris Johnson's supporters in government. The Prime Minister said Goldsmith's comments were incompatible with his job in government and said he'd been asked to apologise but decided a different course. In response, Goldsmith had said that he'd been happy to acknowledge he should not have commented on the Privileges Committee and denied that this was the cause of his resignation. I think Zac Goldsmith, wasn't he the one who resigned over Heathrow 4 that Johnson ultimately sanctioned? Yes. Does Borski and Philby has rhythm, Max? Tommy Leg, thanks for that super chat. Philby. Borski and Philby. Yeah, they rhyme. Borski and Philby. But as a minister, he said our parliamentary democracy can only be strengthened by robust exchange and self-criticism, and parliamentarians should absolutely be free to be critical of the reports and proceedings. But it's not so much you're critical of the proceedings or the report. You were, I don't know if it was him specifically, but people like him were saying that it was a witch hunt and that it was a kangaroo court, and that it was a revenge for Brexit and stuff like this. This was not robust criticism of the... And they didn't criticize the procedure. They were criticizing the members of the committee. Like, if you were to say, look, there are problems with the committee, that the way it's working, it's not looking at all the evidence or something like that, that would have been a more legitimate or, reasonable criticism. It's probably a pile of crap, but at least it wouldn't seem as, oh, you're just out to get Boris. That, I think their approach was to narrow. I think it was an attempt to kiss Johnson's arse. So, instead of actually criticizing it in an intelligent way, they did it just to show, look, Boris, I'm on your side. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Tory mad dogs turning on each other. It could be the case, but once again, it's embarrassing for Rishi Sunak. He was about to deliver. This was presented when he was delivering his new plan for the NHS, which I'll get to in just a moment.
Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Rob Powell, who's here. And you've actually come armed with a bit of breaking news, haven't you, Rob?
Yeah, Lord Goldsmith, Zac Goldsmith, has decided to resign. He was a minister for the environment. He's tweeted his resignation letter in the last 10 minutes or so. It's a very lengthy letter, 2 full A4 pages, with lots of stinging criticism that, as he sees it, about the government's record on the environment. He says that the government has been stepping back in terms of animal welfare, ditching a bill related to that, but also, more worryingly, he says the UK has visibly stepped off the world stage and withdrawn its leadership on climate change and nature. Stinging criticism for the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, as well, saying that he used to be able to, Zac Goldsmith saying he used to be able to get so much done as a minister, but now struggles to essentially get the Prime Minister interested, accusing him of being uninterested, and saying that signal or lack of interest in the environment and climate change from Number 10 is trickling down through Whitehall. The other thing to mention, though, whilst there's no mention of it in this lengthy resignation letter, Lord Goldsmith in the last 24 hours had also been in the news because he faced criticism by the Privileges Committee over how he had described an investigation into Boris Johnson and what he'd said to the Commons over lockdown parties. He was essentially criticised by that committee of MPs for, as they saw it, undermining the committee and undermining the process of Parliament. So this is someone who is very close to Boris Johnson, an ally of Boris Johnson. So whilst this resignation ostensibly is about the environment, the timing is interesting coming as it does at this point. So I don't think you can see it without that context.
Look, the two of them are connected. It's a case of, you need to say sorry to the select committee. You need to apologise for your comments. I'm not doing that. How dare you, Rishi, who stabbed Boris in the back. I'm going to resign over this, but I'm not going to say this. I'm going to say it's about the environment. Look, Zac Goldsmith has a long history of, environmental issues, talking about environmental issues. So I think these things are important to him, but it's a coincidence. It's very strange that he resigns exactly at this moment. Rishi Sunak has been in power for some time. Why didn't he resign before that? Kevin Ladd, thanks so much for that super chat. I hope Sir Ron Venti will manage without his bank accounts. I'm sure he'd be able to explain any irregularities like Father Ted. It was just resting in his account. I think that was the excuse he was giving. And then a guy called Dimitri called up, and then he had to get off the phone pretty quickly. So I'm not sure what happened there. Thanks, Kevin Ladd. And Alistair too. Moving on. So, what is this NHS plan? Well, it seems that Rishi Sunak wants to hire lots of staff and train people up, but doesn't really explain how. More doctors and nurses will be trained, and thousands of new roles will be created to work alongside them as part of a major NHS England workforce plan. University places for medical students will double. A new apprenticeship scheme for doctors is planned, and medical degrees could be shortened. Shortened? Is this like getting, HGV drivers to pass exams without having to reverse trucks? It's like, is medical, so you go to your doctor and you say, doctor, I have this pain in my chest. The doctor said, I'm not trained on how, I didn't do that extra year to learn about what happens in people's chests. So it's like, okay, I'm a bit worried now. I think I'll go home. Is this what the plan is? I hope not. Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says the delayed workforce plan was historic and had taken time to get right. Unlike post-Brexit trade deals. Critics say poor working conditions in the NHS could undermine the plan. There are more than 110,000 vacancies in the workforce at present, with 1 out of 10 posts unfilled, which creates huge pressures on staff and affects care patients receive. The NHS has been beset by strikes this year, and the dispute with doctors is still continuing. Pay for staff does not feature in the plan. So pay is not part of this plan. So we're going to hire loads of people. We're going to retain lots of people, but we're not actually going to talk about money. Well, money for them. Instead, it focuses on increasing training places for medical and nursing students, and a new scheme that allows trainee doctors to earn while they learn. Okay, the latter part is probably a good idea. So trainee doctors can earn some money. That's a way of encouraging them to stay in that service. But if the pay is better somewhere else, they may go, okay, well, I'm going to move to Australia where they pay me more, or New Zealand. But one of the main issues doctors, nurses, and other NHS staff have been saying that is the problem is the work environment. They're overworked, and many of them haven't seen a pay increase since 2009. A consultation on 5-year medical degrees could be shortened by a year. Will also be launched. I'm not sure that's a really good idea. Alistair, thank you so much for that super chat. Oh my God, Tories did that 6 months course for doctors. I was not 6 months. It's like you have to fill in a form. At the beginning, you have to fill in a form talking about how many days you attended, and there may be a threshold there as well. Well, I've turned up for half the 6 month course. Can I still be a doctor? Well, yeah, we're desperate, so here's your stamp. Unveiling the full details of the 15-year plan. Rishi Sunak probably won't be in power for the next 15 weeks. There's talk of a general election sometime in autumn. So I don't know if Rishi Sunak's plan for 15 years, I don't know if he'll be around in 15 weeks. Mr. Sunak said that he would deliver the biggest ever expansion in the number of doctors and nurses that we train, and a plan to reform the NHS so we can deliver better care in a changing world. Why is this happening now? Why didn't this happen before? But he said overcoming the challenges of an overstretched workforce won't be quick or easy. He keeps saying this is his new mantra, is that, I'm being straight with you. It's difficult. It's not going to be easy. We could make good decisions, but instead we're making bad ones. But that's what we are. That's what we do. But he said overcoming the challenge. Okay, we're making the tough calls and doing things differently to protect the long-term future of the NHS in this country. The Tories are there to protect the NHS. Okay. NHS England Chief Executive Amanda Pritchard said the plan gave a once-in-a-generation opportunity to put staffing on a sustainable footing for years to come. Okay, but how much is this going to cost? Remember, we're not supposed to ask that question. But, how are you going to pay for this? And why aren't you talking about pay for staff? Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting said ministers had nicked the opposition's plan, and he criticised the delay in publishing it. there is a reason why the NHS is understaffed, and there's a lack of the workforce plan for the workforce plan for the last 13 years. The Liberal Democrats said the plan had come too late for the millions of people who had suffered in pain and died in hospital corridors waiting for treatment. And the Nuffield Trust think tank warned that the dismal reality of working in the NHS at the moment could undermine the push to tackle staff shortages in the long term. There is a risk that we will feed more and more people into training only to burn themselves out faster. You have to do something about the current. You have to look. We all know the solution to this problem. It's about bringing people in from abroad. It doesn't even have to be from the EU, but you need to encourage people to work in the NHS. So you need to pay them more, and you have to make the working conditions better. Provisions for doctors, nurses in the UK low compared to Western countries. So the number of doctors. So this is the OECD average calculation using figures from 2021 or the latest data for each nation. Practicing doctors and nurses per 1,000 of the population. So you can see doctors, Austria has the highest. So we're talking about 5 doctors per 1,000 of the population. The UK here at the bottom. Even Ireland is higher per 1,000, which is normally there are shortages of GPs in Ireland, but Italy is declining at the moment. There are fewer people want to get into medicine. Nurses, you can see here Norway, world beating. And there's a shortage of nurses in different countries around the world, with the UK, Italy and Spain at the bottom. But it seems to be GPs and doctors in general, there's a shortage of. The targets for 2031 include doubling medical school places and for student doctors to 15,000 a year. Okay, you can have many medical places you want, but you need to encourage people to... You need to make the jobs attractive. It's not just a case of making them available. You have to make them attractive. 50% increase in GP trainee places for junior doctors from 4,000 to 6,000. 24,000 more nurses and midwife student places a year, close to double the number now. I don't think there's a shortage of people who want to be... I don't think there's a shortage of places. I think there's a shortage of people who want to do the job. Doubling training places for nursing associates to more than 10,000 by 2031. Increasing training places for physician associates to 10,000 by 2036. This is all good news if this is the plan. But what are you doing now? There's no point saying to people, look, you can't get a hip replacement at the moment, or you're waiting 5 hours for an ambulance, but don't worry, by 2036 you'll only have to wait 10 minutes for an ambulance. What? So it's just 13 years you'll have an ambulance arriving in very short time. It could actually be a flying ambulance, it could be a robot ambulance, an AI ambulance. That's where the investment is going. Oh, goodness. So NHS England has published a 150-page long-term plan. It's here. So as we saw before, training more staff, retaining staff. So what is the plan for retaining staff? Renewed focus on retention would mean up to 130,000 staff stay working in the NHS settings longer. We will take action to improve culture, leadership and well-being of NHS staff, including modernising the NHS pension scheme through new retirement flexibilities to help retain our most experienced staff while making it easier and attractive for retired staff to return. Okay, support for continued professional development, occupational health services for NHS staff and additional childcare. The childcare option is pretty crap, but nothing here there's no mention about pay and no mention about working hours. Are you going to reduce people's working hours? No. These are the things they're talking about. They're talking about being burnt out, that they're overworked. There's nothing here that will improve that. reform the way staff work. So the plan sets out ways to modernise how people work and train, expanding the training of new roles such as nurses, associate, always saw before, growing the number of staff in advanced and enhanced clinical and consultant practice roles. How? Increasing the number of level degree apprenticeships routes to enter the nursing, medical and other professions. Streamlining training to get... Streamlining is always a dodgy word that they tend to use. To get professionals from the classroom to the clinic more quickly, and harnessing the use of new technology, including AI and remote monitoring, to free up clinical time. Some of these things could work, but the main problem is you don't have enough staff now. You're hemorrhaging staff because of the working conditions and the pay. So I think a better solution would be, let's increase the pay and let's bring in staff from abroad so we can reduce the workload. To hell with the Home Office. To hell with the Home Office's obsession with racists and bigots. Let's bring in the staff we need now and train and do these things in parallel. So at least we're easing the load on the current workload, increase their pay, allow them to work shorter, less hours a week if we bring in extra staff, and do the training at the same time. So these things could... None of these policies are bad. It's just that they're not dealing with the core problem.
The NHS is 75 years old, but we're working it harder than ever. It's struggling. The government says reinforcements are on their way.
Stuart says, get rid of private funding, that would help. Yes, because there's so much money going into the private sector. The NHS trusts can't get the staff they need. They're not available, so they have to rely on agency staff. And agency staff are extremely expensive. But the Tories don't care about that.
Looking forward to finishing my course and then using all these skills that I've learned to really make a difference.
Every day I come home thinking just what a great privilege the job is.
I felt like I wanted to give something back, so that's how I've ended up in the NHS.
But also some time for us. The Prime Minister was at a hospital in Cambridge this morning. He says he will...
Why isn't he wearing a doctor's coat? I'm surprised he's not wearing a doctor's coat.
Revive the NHS in England by fixing the critical shortage of staff.
Thank you so much. Well done.
It just isn't right that we don't train enough people here at home to properly staff our National Health Service. We'll double the number of medical training places by 2031, focusing on areas where there are too few doctors today. We'll train over 24,000 more nurses and midwives a year, and increase the number of GP training places by 50%.
The number of unfilled posts has soared since 2010 and now stands at 112,000. That's 1 in 10 jobs. The government says by training more staff and hanging on to more of those it's got, by 2036-7, the NHS in England could have 170,000 extra nurses, 60,000 more doctors, and 71,000 more health professionals like paramedics, physios and radiographers. Many of those will be apprentices who'll train on the job. Steffi Ward is earning while she studies mental health nursing with the University of Derby.
I have children, I have family that I still need to support as I'm going through the training. So that's why I chose the apprenticeship route, to gain that hands-on experience and that solid academic foundation at the same time.
Today's workforce plan talks about a fifth of future staff coming out of apprenticeships. Derby University cautions such courses are not simple or cheap to do well.
Universities need support to be able to increase the number of apprenticeships. And if what's in the workforce plan is to be realised, that has to be structured, it has to be invested in.
The doctors' union, the BMA, says consultants could struggle to train apprentice doctors because they're so overstretched. One of the reasons, along with pay, that consultants and junior doctors will go on strike next month.
Shouldn't doctors going on strike look at today and think, well, the government is making a sincere effort to ease the pressure on us and on the NHS and therefore not strike?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting because the report opens to acknowledge that hard-working staff are the bedrock of the NHS, and that's not what it feels like at this point in time. So you need to be able to value the doctors that you've got already. They have seen their pay fall in real terms by 20, 30%. And unless we do value doctors now, why would anyone come into the profession in the future? So getting both ends of this equation right are hugely important for the future of the health service.
Patient satisfaction with the NHS is the lowest it's ever been. Staff satisfaction too, it seems.
Why is staff and patient satisfaction so low with the NHS? When did this happen? When did this start? Well, we all know it started from 2010 onwards, when the Tories took over. They ran it into the ground. They privatised it. They underfunded it, or in a sense they funded it, but the money didn't go to public services, it went to private companies. It went to the private sector within the NHS. So that's why people are not happy with it. It's like the water companies. The money is going in, but it's going to people who shouldn't be receiving it. In the sense the private companies are making the money here, and they're not providing the service that existed before. So of course patients are upset, and patients view the NHS as broken. It needs to be, in a sense, nationalised once again. But we can't get away from Brexit here, because social care relies on workers from abroad. The NHS relies on workers from abroad. If people can't be moved out of social care, moved into social care because there aren't the staff available, then the NHS is facing these backlogs. It can't move people out. And that's why it's resulting in people waiting for hours for an ambulance, because they can't get people out of the hospital and into social care, into care homes, because the staff aren't available to deal with that.
Many have been on strike and many have just gone. Tens of thousands of nurses quit last year, and almost 10,000 doctors gave up their licences to practice. Unless the NHS can improve retention, a big recruitment drive may just be like trying to fill a very leaky bucket.
Labour said the Conservatives are to blame for an NHS in crisis and are now stealing its ideas.
Well, Labour's been calling on the government to double the number of medical school places as part of our plan for the biggest expansion of NHS staff in history. And it looks like the Conservatives have looked to Labour for the answers. I hope the country will do that at the next general election too.
On all sides, there is relief to finally see a workforce plan for the NHS in England. But with the current ills, 7 million patients waiting and more strikes planned, things could feel worse before they get better.
Oh my goodness. Once again, it's not going to get better anytime soon, because the people in charge don't want it to get better anytime soon. This is window dressing. This is an attempt I believe by Rishi Sunak to pretend that he's actually doing something. Look at me, I'm doing something for the NHS, when in reality, they're not talking about bringing in workers from abroad in order to fill the gaps until people are trained up, and they're not talking about pay. So pay is one of the issues that's driving people out of the NHS and into the arms of Canada and New Zealand and Australia, where the pay is higher, but also the working conditions. They're burnt out. They need a break. They need more staff. So here's an interesting, or maybe not interesting, proposal from Labour when it comes to the water companies. So as we know, one of the water companies, Thames Water, is struggling. It may collapse. The government may need to step in and nationalise it or bail it out in some way. It has debts of up to £14 billion. Half of, what's her name? Dido Harding's massive grant. It says here, Severn Trent chief proposes a social purpose water firms amid utilities crisis. I'm having a bit of a struggle to read this. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. Still harping on like we have still harping on like it will have people tomorrow. Yes. Welcome to the stream, Magic. Great to see you on tonight. Hope you're well. Yeah, it's like, will there be people tomorrow? No, there probably won't. There won't be. It's going to take years to train up the doctors and nurses necessary. You can't just throw money at the problem either. But there's no mention of money, which is a problem as well. 37 billion, where did that go? Dido Harding, that's a blast from the past. Severn Turd, that's more like it, Max. Thanks. Thanks, Sir Larry. So the chief executive of the water company, Severn Trent, is seeking backing from the industry and the Labour Party for British utility firms to be reformed as social purpose companies that would stay in private hands but give greater weight to the needs of customers, staff and the environment. Liv Garfield, who runs a FTSE 100 company since 2014, has said this week written to the chief executives of the utility companies in the water, energy and telecom sectors, inviting them to an off-the-record roundtable chaired by Will Hutton, columnist for The Observer and the co-chair of the Purposeful Company. Amid the financial crisis in the water industry during which government officials have discussed a temporary renationalisation of Thames Water, Garfield is trying to shape the debate over the future of England's 11 private-owned regional water monopolies and other utilities. Her proposal include provisions of a social tariff for vulnerable customers, a strong voice for employees in strategic decision-making, and making positive contributions to the environment. In a confidential email obtained and published by the Evening Standard, Garfield wrote, "While it's clear that Labour will not include nationalisation in its next manifesto, they are not keen on entering into the election race championing the status quo. The leadership thinks there is room for improvement, and politically there is significant pressure to do something about utilities." So what is this? It's not, instead of having private companies run the water, and instead of going down the nationalisation route, which I believe she's saying here that Labour, so she's not going to say we should nationalise because Labour is not going to do that, or Labour don't seem to have it on the table. I think one of the reasons, now I don't necessarily agree with this, but one of the reasons is that if these water companies were nationalised, the government would inherit the debt. And it's £14 billion in debt. It's a massive amount of debt just for one company. So the government could write off the debt. They could do that. It would piss off a lot of creditors. Maybe the government is one of these creditors as well. I don't know who the creditors are, but it could create some problems. But let's say they inherit the debt. This would be a massive amount of debt that the government would have to pay off. But you would have control of the water, and you would be able to reduce prices for users, and you'd be able to upgrade the service. The Tories are talking about giving the water companies £1.6 billion, so they can just basically hand it to their shareholders. This other approach would be to bring people, so to change the makeup of the companies, so that they would have to have people on who are so they would be maybe the unions would be operating, so a representative of the unions or a representation of the workers would be a member of the board of directors, I believe. This is a step in the right direction. It's better than what the status quo is. The better solution will be nationalisation. But in this case, you would... See, the problem with my only problem with this is that yes, you could have somebody who's representing the workers, but that's not going to stop the companies from pumping raw sewage into rivers and lakes. You'd have to have somebody with power. You'd have to have it evenly split between environmentalists on the board of directors, somebody representing workers, and somebody representing the private interest, the shareholders maybe, like a CEO. But the one side could outvote the other and say, no, let's just continue pumping raw sewage into rivers and lakes. You wouldn't be able to do that with the state-owned company, because it would be Parliament that would be in charge. Ready for them to bail out the water companies at great cost. I think this is what's probably going to happen, is the water companies will be bailed out. They'll be given a huge amount of money and said, please don't get into debt again. And they'll take this money and pay huge amounts of money to in bonuses to executives, and they'll of course send some money to their shareholders, or they'll do some buybacks. Just remember, your Scots in the crowd. Our taxes are going to bail out all these in the south. Just saying, yes. Yes. Yeah, if you're a Scot and you're worried about your water quality, and you're seeing money being given to your tax-paying money given to private water companies in England, you should be a little bit upset. Even Douglas Ross should be a little bit upset. We're almost at the end of the stream, guys, so I just want to cover one final story here. What's happening not in Britain but in France?
This is how the French police try to regain control by surging their numbers. Here in Nanterre, they faced another night of running battles, now using armoured vehicles and specialised SWAT teams to enter these volatile estates. You could see there were more police, but it did nothing to stem the tension and the anger. Blue lights mixed with the orange glow of flames. The roads here are full of scorch marks and peppered with burnt-out cars.
Just a few minutes ago, we went down that road and we were threatened by a gang of youths with rocks and telling us to clear out. And look how quickly this can change now. This place has been flooded with dozens of riot police, big armoured vehicle over there, and above us, a police helicopter monitoring what's going on.
All this disorder was sparked by the death of a 17-year-old called Nael, killed by a police officer who's now been charged with voluntary homicide. His lawyer says the officer is truly sorry, that he didn't mean to kill the boy, but insists he did have to take action. Nanterre's violence was not isolated. The disorder is spreading. In Sévran, another of Paris's suburbs, a supermarket was looted and then set alight. There's more looting in this central Paris shopping district. The Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, had sent 40,000 police onto France's streets. He arrived at police headquarters unannounced at 1 a.m. to watch events unfold. What he saw was a tableau of trouble. This was Marseille, but fires were burning all over France. Curfews were brought in and ignored in a couple of places, and there were even reports of copycat attacks in neighbouring Belgium. The huge surge in police numbers was supposed to bring a sense of order and calm. There's very little evidence that it's worked. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Nanterre.
Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Scotland will have to pay for this 10% of the bill. Yes, unfortunately, when it comes to bailing out the English water companies, Scotland will have to pay it as well, and Wales and Northern Ireland. It's, of course, a lot of people are taking advantage of the situation here because they're saying, oh, here's an opportunity to riot. I'm not sure if it's, of course, not all of it is related to the death of this teenager. And once again, England, once again, France is under is facing severe tension and is putting pressure on the government to deal with it. The general public, I imagine, are against this, and they will be putting pressure on the government to do something about it. And Macron is probably not getting enough sleep at night. But it I hope what it will result in is in reform of the police service. This is the only way it can be dealt with. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for your support. Thanks for smashing the like button. Before we finish, we have our one for the road. Remember to check out the Sunday roast this Sunday. Very interesting guests. And see if I don't see you then, I'll see you on Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. Before we finish, we have this one for the road.
There are reports this week that water companies might increase their bills by up to 40% as they struggle to pay the interest on huge debts. Minister, privatisation has been a disaster, hasn't it?
Not at all. It's generated billions of pounds in dividends, which sounds like a success to me.
Aren't the water companies letting people down?
Shareholders are people too. And look, the water industry desperately needed the injection of energy and innovation that comes from being part of a market.
But is it a real market when people don't have any choice in buying your product?
Well, they do. They don't have to use water from the taps. They could use Evian.
What?
Or San Pellegrino if they fancy a bit of fizz.
Are you really suggesting that people buy bottled water during a cost of living and climate crisis?
Well, they probably have an own brand version in Lidl or somewhere, and you can recycle the bottles, I would imagine.
Wouldn't you agree that giving private companies access to a monopoly just leads to big profits and no consequences if they fail?
I don't know about that. Every time I play Monopoly, I seem to end up in jail.
But that won't happen to the water companies, will it?
God no, that's just a game.
There are reports that Thames Water could go under.
Ha, very good. Go under, because of all the leaks.
So are you going to bail it out?
Oh, stop it.
Do you think this is funny?
Well, there's no point in crying. Tears are too salty to drink. Look, privatisation has led to massive investment in the water industry.
And yet raw sewage is still being pumped into nearly every river and beach, making them completely unsuitable for bathing.
Well, who wants to bathe in a river anyway? That's just weird. Have a bath at home, using a few bottles of Highland Spring.
And in some areas, that raw sewage is causing the return of waterborne diseases.
People are so capricious. They love a costume drama, but then turn around and say they don't want dysentery. I mean, make up your minds.
So what happens if Thames Water fails?
Well, the government would simply put it into administration.
You'll nationalise it?
In a way.
A good way?
No.
Thank you, Minister. Next up, as MPs who attacked the Privileges Committee report into Boris Johnson are criticised by the Privileges Committee in a report which the same MPs have in turn attacked, we ask, will this cycle carry on forever? And does this now count as a feud?
Maybe it does. So guys, once again, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thanks for all of the super chats, greatly appreciated. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. And apologies at the beginning of the stream, there were some technical issues. I see you on Sunday for the Sunday roast. If I don't see you then, I'll see you on Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. And for those new members, I'll see you in the post-stream chat later on tonight. Have a great weekend, guys. Take care as always. Good night.